Hi, everyone around the world. I am so happy to be back with you live. And guess what? With your wonderful support, even when I've had to travel, today we have broken through 180,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. And it was only 1 month ago, on June 25th, 2021, that there was disappointment in those 9 unclassified pages that the Director of National Intelligence released publicly about unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, also known for decades as UFOs. But the 9 pages did not report the truth, that since World War II, our government and our allies have known that UFOs are not human machines. So tonight, I'm going to share with you one of the few military sources who has been willing to talk with me on the record in video about his exposure to the truth of extraterrestrial biological entities, and his shock that his military superiors were dedicated to never telling the public the truth. I'm going back to 2005 when I began reporting about the research that former Las Cruces, New Mexico State Representative John Andrew Kistner shared with me from his 1990s UFO investigations. His focus was the rocket and missile range in southern New Mexico that was famous for the first atomic bomb test at the White Sands Trinity site. And then, after the 1945 end of the war, when 2 American atomic bombs were dropped on Japan, the United States government created a top-secret intelligence operation paperclip from 1945 to 1959 to bring 1,600 German scientists to the White Sands Proving Ground. All those German rocket scientists had worked for Adolf Hitler to develop military rockets and missiles during World War II. Representative Kistner talked to whistleblowers working in the 1990s at White Sands about their first-hand knowledge of deliberate microwave, missile, and artillery attacks on unidentified aerial craft that the public knew as UFOs. Representative Kistner said he was told there was a secret standing order after World War II for U.S. pilots to try to shoot down UFOs so the alien technology and pilots could be studied. In 1947, the American commanding officer of the White Sands Proving Ground was Lieutenant Colonel Harold R. Turner. He was written about in this May 16, 1947, Las Cruces Sun News front page, quote, V2 goes astray, lands in 6 miles of Alamogordo. Lieutenant Colonel Harold R. Turner, White Sands Proving Ground commanding officer, today blamed, quote, peculiar phenomena, close quote, for the erratic test flight of a German V2 rocket, which landed only 6 miles east of Alamogordo yesterday afternoon at a place called Indian Springs. Those peculiar phenomena were reported several times at the White Sands Proving Ground in southern New Mexico, moving alongside rockets built and tested with the help of the 1,600 German scientists brought to the United States in Operation Paperclip, approved by then-President Harry S. Truman. New Mexico Representative Andy Kistner was told by his military whistleblower sources that those peculiar phenomena were UFOs, craft from beyond Earth, and that several disks and wedge-shaped craft did come down after United States experimentation with directing strong microwave frequencies at the UFOs. The most famous publicly reported crash was between Roswell and Corona, New Mexico, before the 4th of July, 1947. Our government's top secret MAJIC documents about the UFO crash retrievals were leaked to investigators. The alien beings are called extraterrestrial biological entities, an acronym for EBAs or EBINs. One military source contacted me after his September 1995 20-year retirement from the United States Navy. He retired as an E-7 Chief Petty Officer, Chief Yeoman. He allowed me to use his real name, Thomas Colman Sheppard, born in 1957. His reason for going on the record? He told me, quote, "I can't believe our government is still keeping this a secret," close quote. He feels strongly that the public should be told the truth. Here is Thomas Colman Sheppard's Naval History of Assignments from March 26, 1976 to 1978 with Amphibious Group 1, Pacific Area Command at White Beach in Okinawa, Japan. Now we're going back 45 years to Thanksgiving night in 1976. Tom was only 19 years old and stationed at White Beach Naval Base in Okinawa, 713 miles south of Nagasaki, Japan. At the time, he was a seaman apprentice to the staff of Commander Amphibious Group 1. Most of his work was clerical. That Thanksgiving night in 1976, Tom was in the U.S. Air Force Kadena Base Administration Building with two other men, Robert Turman and Craig Howard. Howard was mechanically gifted and liked to prove that he could get into sensitive areas and top-secret safes that were classified off-limits. That Thanksgiving night, Craig Howard was able to get into a vault that contained classified material and was yelling for Turman to join him. Tom Sheppard watched as Turman ran by into the administration office that contained the vault. Sheppard wondered what Howard had found in the safe that was so urgent. Listen now as retired Navy Chief Yeoman Tom Sheppard tells what happened.
And I saw Howard and Topin go into the vault. And they were in there for about 5 minutes. And Howard comes out first, and Topin follows. And Topin's kind of got tears at his eyes, and he said that it's true. Well, this really caught my attention, so I was really astounded to hear, this kind of reaction from him. So then Howard, he calls me over and he says, "Come on in." So I go in there, right, and it's a vault, and it's a small room, and it's got the filing cabinets and the safes. And it's got a table right there in the middle of the vault. The table's about the size of this, but square and taller. And on that table, he had this file laid out. And this file was, it was like all spread out on the table here, okay? And it had photographs and documents and the covers and everything. And he said, "This is what it's all about," and he handed me one of the photographs. And I looked at it, and I had no idea what I was looking at. It was an old black and white photograph. It had a old truck in it, and down on the ground, and you could tell they were out in the desert, was some sort of a creature. What looked like, what I would call now an alien creature. I had no idea what I was looking at back then, so I said to Howard, "Well, what am I looking at here?" He goes, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "I don't know." He says, "It's an alien creature from outer space, you big dummy." And I go, "No, it is not." And he goes, "Oh, you're looking right at one of these and you still can't believe it? Won't believe it?" That's incredible. So I looked at that photograph, and I looked at another photograph that had them laid out on a skid, and looked at two other photographs, and they had a very dark black background, and one of them was a headshot, and the other photograph was of it, an elongated shot on a type of gurney. And I looked at the documents, and there was a lot of red ink, top secret. One of the words was MAJIC, and MAJIC was spelt with a J. And I even made a comment to Howard. I says, look at here, they can't even spell MAJIC right. They spelled it with a J. It just looked like an old file, but the gauge of the year would have to be from the 30s or the 40s, just based on the truck. The aliens sort of look like that one down in the Roswell Museum, but different too. Because it's black and white, you couldn't really get a lot of tone with the kind of skin it had. But if I had to describe it at all, it would have been like snake skin in sort of a way.
Can you explain that further?
They had a whitish kind of appearance, but you could tell it had some color to it. And if I had to describe it as matches any other type of animal that I know of, it would have been like that of a white snake, say.
And could you discern scales?
Not really, no. No, but you could tell that they just looked like bumps, and who knows what they were. And it was throughout. But mostly like on the arm area and on the head area.
And was this being wearing any clothes?
No, you could tell that. And here are some renditions of drawings that I made of the photographs that I saw in Okinawa. And what you have here is a desert and the alien entity. Here's the guy in the jeans and the cowboy boots. Here's the truck, and here's the entity in the truck looking out. And in the actual photograph, though, you could barely make him out because of the angle of the sun and what it was doing from the slats to him. So I had to actually have this pointed out to me. This is what we called photograph number 1. This is another rendition. This is at the aircraft hangar. Okay. Pretty much, this is really a rendition because of the angle and all. I really am not an artist, okay, so I couldn't really draw it to the right angle. But over here is the military man in his khaki pants and his brown shoes. And this is the front of the aircraft hangar. This is the opening here. And I tried to, what really stood out for me in this photograph was the angle of the slants from the panes of the windows from the hangar, of the style of hangar that it was. Mm-hmm. And here's the alien that's mostly intact, and next to him, or it, is the other alien that was crumpling in a fetal position, and most of its side had been badly damaged. And here's the alien that's next to it, and I tried to make a rendition here of the crumpling and everything, but I didn't do a good job really. But most of its head, as I recall, was badly damaged either through charring of some sort or other damage.
And burned.
Or burned, yeah. Okay. And here's another rendition. Now in the photograph, this is of course all black, okay? But what you're seeing is where the flash took the photograph of what you can see here, and it's a gurney in an elongated fashion, okay? And the alien entity laying on top of the gurney. And there you have it. And evidently in the same space, they took a close-up of the alien's head from the neck on up with the same black background. And here it is, as I best recall. And I tried to get as best to make it look as real as I could by not giving too much detail with the eyes. But the eyes, the sockets are very almond-shaped, and they're fatter up here and they skinny down, okay? They're fatter here and they skinny down. And the blotting I'm trying to describe here, okay, looks sort of, well, veiny, I guess you could say, or just bumps. And that was the best I could describe it here.
And this reminded you of reptilian?
Yeah, you could tell that it was sort of reptilian-ish, but at the same time, no, you really couldn't because of the black and white photo, okay? I do recall that its neck was, in comparison to its head, really this skinny, and it had a lot of wrinkles.
As if it were old?
No, as if it was just the way it was. The way it was.
But did that remind you also of a reptile?
Mm-hmm, yeah. I tried to make a description of how long its fingers are and in comparison to its wrist. Mm-hmm. This is a better drawing, okay, of its hand, palm in this fashion, all right, without a thumb. If it had a thumb, it was just sort of a nib-looking thing here. And it did have these slanted tip fingertips, and on the tips, you could tell it was sort of a roundness, or what I call a suction cup. Linda, there is nothing on this earth that we know of that looks anything like this. It's not a human being. I'm telling you straight up. It wasn't a monkey. It wasn't an animal of any kind. It was like nothing that I had ever seen, and that's all I could say. It was definitely not a human. It was definitely not an animal that we know of.
What emotion did you feel?
I was in shock. I mean, what can I say? I mean, I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't even accept it at the time. It took hours for me to even accept what I had saw. Even with a guy that was older than me that was telling me, look at what you're looking at here, okay? These were not fakes. This was real stuff. I was overwhelmed.
Tom Sheppard and his two Navy colleagues, Craig Howard and Robert Turman, thought they had been able to enter the classified vault without anyone finding out. But on the Monday after that 1976 Thanksgiving weekend, the three men were summoned by a very angry Chief James Seeley. Tom saw the other two men had to put on their dress uniforms for some kind of punishment, and he was kept in office detention for several hours. But Thomas Sheppard was never asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement that would have sworn him to secrecy for the rest of his life. A few months later, Tom finally learned more from Craig Howard that the vault photos and files were from a UFO crash near Roswell, New Mexico in the late 1940s.
It was probably a couple of months after the incident that I finally came up to Howard and I said, okay, what was all that? And tell me what you know about what we saw. And he told me about Roswell. And he said that, he said two things really. He said that he had heard of Roswell before and that he did see Roswell in those documents. And that flying saucers, or whatever you wanted to call them at the time, did crash in New Mexico in the 40s, and that the government, or the military, whatever you want to call it, okay, recovered the bodies, and we've been hiding them ever since. I eventually transferred in March of '78. Topin got accepted for a naval officer candidate school program. And Howard transferred sometime in '77. And I'll never forget that day either.
What happened?
Well, he had made second class, which was E5, okay? And I thought he was doing really good. And there at the last minute, or within weeks of having to have gotten to re-enlist, he backed out. So I came up to him on the day he was leaving. He was in his uniform. And I said, Howard, you know, what gives, man? You know, life is good. You made second class. Why are you getting out? And he said, Tom, I just can't do it no more. And I said, does it have anything to do with, and he said, the vault, you know, what we saw in that? And he looked at me, and he got beet red, and he was shaking his finger at me, and he said, don't you ever bring that up to me again. And that was the last thing I ever heard from him. And I haven't seen him in over 30 years now.
Did you take it from that comment that he had been punished because of the vault incident?
I believe that, well, it's either one of two things. I think they jacked with him myself. I think they gave him threats. But It could have been just that he knew a truth, and it wasn't going to go anywhere, and he didn't like that.
Were you asked to sign any kind of a non-disclosure agreement?
No, never. Let's jump ahead to 1989. Unsolved Mysteries comes on TV, and it was a popular show then. And one night, they played, Robert Stack hosting, the Roswell incident. And I had no idea at the time that this was in books or had already been talked about. I was literally blown away. And I thought to myself, well, you know, if national TV is going to come out and blast it all over the place, what's to stop me? So at the time, I worked at a 3-star command there in Norfolk. It was ComNav Airland. And I worked for the operations department. It's Code 30, and one of the people in Code 30 was a man named Captain Wood. And he had a person that worked for him who was a lieutenant commander, and I don't remember his last name. But one day, it was shortly after this was played on TV, the Roswell incident on Unsolved Mysteries, the subject of ETs came up, and we were just talking, and even though I had been, well, I'd run into a lot of trouble in other commands, not a lot of trouble, but, well, somewhat anyway, okay? We could get into that. But I had opened my mouth before, okay? And I was tired of keeping it closed. So I told this lieutenant commander who worked for Captain Wood what I knew, and I told him the whole Okinawa story, and the file, and the photos, and the whole thing. And I thought the guy was going to have a heart attack. He went into shock. He got really angry. He wanted to tape record me. He started making threats on me. We got to sort of a heated argument. And he said that he was going to have to tell Captain Wood about this. So I said, fine, tell him. So a couple hours later, Captain Wood calls me in his office. He says, sit down. Heard you did some talking today. And I said, yes, sir, I sure did. You want to tell me what you told Lieutenant Commander down there? All right. So I told him the whole Okinawa story. And he said, all right, I'm pretty convinced that you saw what you saw. But just so you know, we don't call them aliens. I said, we don't? No, we call them EBEs, for extraterrestrial biological entities. I said, all right, well, that makes sense. Then we had a conversation, and it was basically like this. I asked him why we had kept this under wraps for all these years, and what did it have to do with the military and the whole thing. And he gave me some descriptions about it. He said that since that period of time, and on up till, you know, present day, that
You're talking about the 40s to 1990?
yeah, the 40s to 1990.
Right.
Okay. That they had been using this, and it was all for good reasons.
They had been using what?
Well, you know, I've never really understood that either. They've been using the technology that the aliens gave them, or they've been using the crashed vehicles. Even though he said that, okay, it was just sort of inference that, yeah, the whole thing that we recovered, okay? So that's how I took it.
That our government was using?
Yes,
For?
what we had recovered.
For?
For purposes of military advantage. I asked him if the president knew, and he said, can't go there. I asked him how this might have an effect on society and religion. And basically the whole thing was people couldn't handle it. That there'd be too much shock. And we've got to maintain this under wraps. It could be disruptive to society. It could be disruptive to the Bible. And so, you know, I asked him, I said, well, you know, look, yeah, you have the Bible, okay, but it's not like as if people aren't going to, you know, people are going to just quit believing in Jesus or anything, okay? Come on. I said, no, but, you know, this could open the door to several other things in the Bible that, you know, we wouldn't want and religions to have to deal with, okay? It could just open a door to many things that would be so disruptive, we can't go there. So you just need to keep this under wraps. You're not in trouble or anything, okay? And that's it. And if you say that we had this conversation, you can, you know, it didn't happen. So if you know what's good for you, you're going to keep this under wraps. You want to make chief, don't you? I said, yeah. All right, well, let's play ball by the rules then.
Did you ask him when the public and the media would be allowed to know?
No, probably never.
Is that what he said?
That's what he said. Probably never.
But that means the planet is living in a huge lie.
Yes, of course it does. Especially when you accept that when you're in the military. You accept that because you're working with secret material all the time. And you understand that the United States maintains military advantage over our enemies. And you accept that. That's an okay answer for a military guy.
But isn't that an incredible answer? Probably never, that the world would be kept in the dark forever?
We went there, and I respectfully tried to argue with him. I said, yes, when we recovered the aliens, okay, that was the 1940s. That's completely different from today. This is the 90s, okay? People would be able to handle it. And he said, oh yeah, you think so? I said, well, could you handle it? No. Did it scare you? Yeah. Would it be old news in 2 weeks? I don't know.
How does that make you feel as an American?
Oh, that's a big question. How does that make me feel as an American? I think the public should be given the truth. And that's all there is to it. Enough is enough. For years, I've understood the need for secrecy, but I can't accept it no more. Not for this. Not to arrogantly and outlandishly just come right out with books and in media to say Roswell didn't happen. It hurts.
Thomas Colman Sheppard was discharged from active duty as E-7 Chief Petty Officer, Chief Yeoman, U.S. Navy on November 30th, 1995, after 20 years of service. How long have American government and military insiders been enforcing a cover-up of the big secret about alien non-human presences on Earth, in our solar system and beyond? Well, for at least 35 years before Thomas Sheppard and his Navy colleagues got into that classified safe. The timeline of government knowledge about an extraterrestrial presence goes back to at least April of 1941 in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, when 3 identical cloned dead alien bodies were found with a wedge-shaped craft that crashed or was shot down. And now I want to bring up one of these books that I have shown you many times, but I'm never repeating from the same pages. And this one is extremely important in the context of Thomas Colman Sheppard, a long history of knowledge by our government and our government's allies in World War II of another intelligence or intelligences working on this planet since World War II at least, and learning eventually that they go back for millions of years. And what I'm going to share with you in this ongoing effort to understand the truth about timelines, who, what, and the whole issue of friendly, neutral, or hostile. These are Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso's own closing words to his 1997 book. the day after Roswell. Lives were distorted, careers destroyed, and even worse. Very few people knew that what was coming out of foreign technology during the early 1960s had some basis in a crash of a UFO, but it was never made official. And as these lies were distorted and careers destroyed, and even worse, if anybody told the story of what really happened, they could be threatened with financial ruin, and even worse. We were all loyal Americans, and even though some might have had their doubts about hiding the extraterrestrial truth, they went along with what the military wanted. In the aftermath of the war and the fears surrounding the Cold War, we didn't want to risk another panic, so the military recommended, and the White House agreed, to clam up. Just like the secrecy surrounding the Manhattan Project, no words get out. I understood that we were fighting a Cold War with the Soviets and a skirmish war with extraterrestrials. I believed that their intentions were, and still are, hostile. And I believe that we took the steps necessary to develop the weapons that can blunt their threat, close quote. Well, that was in 1997. It's when that book came out. A lot has happened since then. I still think it is fair to keep a context, as I have discussed with Lynn Buchanan, a control remote viewer, about how Project Stargate, all of those remote viewers always came back with the same discovery or the same impression that the universe is teeming with consciousness, and that in relationship to Earth, there are friendlies, there are neutrals, there are hostiles, and the largest number, Lynn told me, were the neutrals. So what was happening during World War II and after? What did General and then President Eisenhower and his good colleague, General Arthur Trudeau, first head of research and development in the Pentagon from the Army, who hired Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso. And we know from other sources that they already had autopsies on bodies, they had different shapes of different types of craft. There's the April 1941 retrieval that the bodies may still be in jars down in one of the deep basements below the Capitol. And that in all of this, as we come together tonight on July 28th of 2021, headed toward the middle of the 21st century, what is the relationship between the ET threat that Colonel Corso felt was there and knew about some of the details in 1961 to 1963 during his Pentagon work for General Trudeau and President Eisenhower? And what is the relationship between the knowledge then and now having to do with the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, also known as ATIP, that was directed by Luis Elizondo, who is now speaking, quite frankly, at least about some of the technological marvels and details that he and others are basically saying the UAP / UFO of the 20th century. They do things in terms of mass moving in gravity that we humans could not do. We have not ever made such machines that could move at 12,000 miles an hour and do a 90-degree turn. So if you looked at where we are right now in 2021, with not a whole heck of a lot more from the government or the DNI than what Lieutenant Philip J. Corso was writing about concerning the early 1960s and how compartmentalized everything was, how the internecine warfare in the Pentagon of one branch in the military and each of the intelligence agencies fighting each other for turf, for control, and all of them agreeing to a policy of complete denial on all things related to extraterrestrial biological entities and their very advanced technologies that our government and other governments on this planet knew that we were dealing with then. Are the threats, is the word threat the same link? In 61 to 63, in what Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso was doing in the Pentagon for General Arthur Trudeau, getting pieces from UFO and various technologies out into American corporations to get them back engineered, patented, and to protect them on the earth from other countries considered to be enemies, which would have included, even then, probably China and Russia to some extent. Was the threat specific to a specific type? Was the threat specific to the ability of the UFO technology to be invisible, to run rings around jets, the 90-degree turns that were observed by so many pilots, impossible for us to do? Was the threat at that level, or was there a threat, as Len Stringfield told me at his home, and I've talked about this before, but it's important to keep weaving these pieces. When Len Stringfield said that the United States Air Force had a standing order to try to shoot down UFOs, as they had also tried in New Mexico, and were effective apparently. And if we had a standing order to shoot down UFOs because we were interested in finding out about their technology and who are the pilots and how are they different and are they all the same, and all of the questions that would normally evolve with something that is not human coming from someplace else and interacting with this planet so vividly from World War II on. It's important, I think, for all of us to keep trying to understand if our own government people, if remote viewers have divided them into friendly, neutral, hostile, the neutral being the largest group. Friendlies and neutrals then are far more numbers than hostile. Why can't we be told that truth? It seems like that the earth might be more peaceful and that there might be more hope to evolve if we understood that we had help and that the word hostile is in the minority, not the majority. I've asked people that I've had the ability to talk about this big subject of policies of denial, with the fear that the world will come unglued and that there will be panic and all of that. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that that is a valid argument anymore. And all of this, that I have begun tonight's program longer than normal before Q&A, is because it seems to me, it feels to me, that we are at such a very important, you might say almost a dividing line and a timeline of the world that we are coming in so rapidly because of COVID into another world. Couldn't this be the perfect time to finally introduce all of the truth so there wouldn't be people who would be hurt in jobs, money, whatever it is, simply because they would like to be able to tell the truth about what they know is in this universe, in our own solar system, in our own moon, underneath the surface of the planet Earth, the moon Ganymede, and on and on and on. They're all part of a fabric of interacting other intelligences that have been using this solar system and so many others going back at least 270 million years. And I hope that my sharing this video of this discussion with Thomas Colman Sheppard, that if you look at it in the new light of what we did not get in the 9 pages from the Director of National Intelligence on June 25th, what we did not get, and you take Thomas Colman Sheppard and you put him as, okay, here is a bead that we were not that was not shared with us by the DNI. Going back through so many of the interviews that I've shared with you from military whistleblowers, Abbott just a week or so ago. All of these are real humans who have had real military careers or science careers or medical careers, engineering careers, and they all basically have the common denominator theme: we're not alone in this universe. It has been known for millions of years by some, thousands of years in the current civilization's history. And all of us should be trying to ask our representatives in the United States, in Congress, why can't we be told the truth that has come from our own military, our own intelligence, people who actually know the facts? Can't we go forward in the rest of the 21st century with breaking this all open? The good, the bad, the ugly, the friendly, the neutral, the hostile. So that's why I shared that with you tonight. So I look forward to your comments. And Ian, I am happy to go forward with comments and questions.
Linda,
Yes.
Are you still there?
Yes, we're waiting for you.
Okay, it cut out then for a moment. I don't know what happened, but you suddenly went quiet on me. Okay, I've got some super chats first of all from Vicky, Courtney C, Moonbird, Bellhorse, Douglas Jones, James Beeson, Vicky Martinez, Jeffrey Rizzo, Mary LeBlanc, Sergeant Cadet, JMDES 8, Ricardo Jimenez, Minnesota Folk, Judy Graham, Andrea Mitchell, Joe Winokur, Parissa Tempest, Cardine Boyce, Cat Chaser, Dowell M, Eric Ackley. There were a lot of super chats tonight. People are glad to see you come back, Linda.
I can't thank you enough. This is difficult work, and without you guys participating and supporting and encouraging, it would be very difficult to do it. So I thank you so much. And I know that we are getting more and more people coming from around the world as well. And Moonbird, thank you for your persistent generosity and great spirit. And to everybody else, I just thank you. I thank you so much. And I am so grateful that there was so much, let's say, presence of all of you while I've had these back-to-back trips. And I will try to keep my travel in and around that Monday through Wednesday period as little as possible, because I love being here with you. I have this feeling, a palpable feeling about what this gestalt of the Earthfiles YouTube broadcast feels like. And it's wonderful. It really helps to keep doing this, what is becoming increasingly hard work. And I can't imagine wanting to do anything more than try to keep diving into what are all of the truths behind that sentence that should be on red neon flashing signs in every country of the world. We, Homo sapiens sapien, are not alone in this universe, and that probably a lot of what is interacting with us in our solar system are the humanoid intelligences from other planetary systems like Procyon A and B, Sirius B, other planets, Tau Ceti, that we have to move to having a language, an education, where we start becoming familiar with the neighborhood around our solar system. 8 light years. If you can move point to point with an Alcubierre drive and you're not moving through space, you're pulling space to you, you might get from Earth to Alpha Centauri in a few seconds. You might get to Procyon A and B, which is out at about 10 light years or thereabouts. They are really not that far depending upon the technology. And this is, it feels to me, no matter what else happens, we are beginning, or I am certainly, I'm beginning to feel from scientists who get in touch with me, people in corporations who get in touch with me, they know so much privately. And I think in some ways they are impatient for the whole world to have all of this opened up. Because as long as it's like it is now, it's extremely schizophrenic, really schizophrenic. And that can't be healthy, I don't think, in the long run, no matter how many times they argue the world isn't ready for the truth. People will panic and scream and jump off of cliffs. No, that's a false argument. So, all of you super chats, everybody, everywhere, thank you for being with me in this fascinating effort to find out what the facts and the truth are about our relationship with ourselves, this planet, the solar system, and on out into the Milky Way galaxy, and what is the current estimated total of galaxies now in this one universe, and there may be an infinite number of universes. 3 trillion galaxies. Isn't it almost quaint to think that there have been 70 some years of a policy that we are alone in the universe and no one could be told because they would panic? When now it just seems so inevitable that it isn't even a question. It's, okay, we're in a pretty big universe full of a lot of suns, black holes, and planets. We should start learning as much as we can from whoever wants us to grow up, true friends. Okay, Ian, what question do we have?
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions tonight, Linda, but I have to tell you, you've got 3 hearts from Hannah's channel tonight as well.
Hannah, I love you. She is my 6-year-old going on 30 granddaughter. She is so bright. She is also extremely physical and can do cartwheels and jumps on trampolines and dances. She's the essence of life. It's what we all cherish, and this is what we should be working for, is helping other life on this planet survive instead of going other directions. If we had more education, and even if we had help, we might all end up happy on a planet where all of us could be like Hannah on Hannah's channel, dancing, singing, and enjoy. I wish that for all of us. Okay, Ian, what about another?
Okay, Linda, Colonel Corso referenced the holographic book. Have you heard about the holographic book that Corso talked about, or has he been the only one who's told you about it? Has that been corroborated by anybody else, any other government or military connection to it?
I honestly think that the reference by Colonel Corso is about Michael Talbot's The Holographic Universe. The timeline was that the holographic universe came out in the early 1990s. Colonel Corso and I and Whitley Strieber and a bunch, we all met at the 50th anniversary in July of 1997. And I believe during that period of time where I did a 3-hour interview live with Colonel Corso and Art Bell, of which I've played some excerpts on my Earthfiles YouTube channel, I think that Colonel Corso and I at one point talked about the book, Michael Talbot's The Holographic Universe, and that I told him about the flight with Bud Hopkins back from a Midwestern conference where Michael Talbot had been a guest. His book was out, and that was the plane ride where Bud told me that he was really surprised when Michael Talbot told him, and that Michael Talbot told Bud, because Michael Talbot was one of Bud's abductee cases. That, and this is what Michael Talbot told Bud Hopkins, that all of the Holographic Universe book that came out, I believe the release date was in 1992 or 93, the book had come down telepathically in some kind of a download into Michael Talbot's mind, and that he put the book together from what he considered to be other intelligence giving him, this is what the universe is, holographic. Well, today, as we are moving toward the last half of 2021, one of the physics questions in which we keep getting papers that seem to be moving the ball down the field toward, is this a holographic universe? And that there's more and more data that seems to start piling up that it certainly may be. And if it is holographic, it's my understanding from the physicists that I have talked with who are working on this question. I was in a meeting at the University of Southern California a year ago with 3 physicists, one of the most fascinating afternoons I've ever spent, listening to them talk as peers about this whole issue. Are we in a holographic universe? And they are bringing up the question, if we are, from what a physicist would say we know about holograms and the holographic nature, as above, so below, that you would have fractals, large fractal patterns at the macro scale and very tiny fractals at the very tiny, tiny scale, and that all of it would have to be projected from another dimension, timeline, universe, or something I have no word for, that the projector of this universe could not be inside the universe. Now, I've seen people on email even question that, but I know for a fact that that's what physicists who are doing work on trying to come up with solid reasoning about why this is or could be a holographic universe, that's one of the subjects that they discussed. Where would the projector of the hologram be to this universe? I find all of these discussions to provoke me at every level. I don't find myself afraid of them. I don't find myself in fear that if it's a holographic universe, that who is projecting this universe and for what reasons could be a threat, that word threat that weaves through all of this. That's just not where my mind and my soul go. I really do think this is a major revolution. I do think that there are the non-humans who have been in and out of this planetary system for a long time. The ones that are friendly and the ones that are neutral. Why can't we be introduced? Why can't we be introduced? And then there would be a whole notch level up of the physicists who are trying to work on, if this is a holographic universe, how is it projected? Maybe they've already had discussions. Maybe this is exactly why physicists have been trying to get to the bottom of the holographic universe as a theory, because Michael Talbot in the early 90s released the book, The Holographic Universe. Colonel Corso and I talked about it at the 50th anniversary of the Roswell crashes in Roswell. And the, I think, exciting questions and subject keep evolving. And that, I think, Ian, is what any quote or discussion by Colonel Corso would be. Bud Hopkins' abduction case, Michael Talbot, the author of The Holographic Universe.
Yeah, I think people are also referencing when Colonel Corso referenced the so-called Yellow Book as well, which again is a different type of holographic book.
Yes, and that is
on that too, if that's been corroborated.
That is, Ian, one of the most fascinating earlier descriptions of details from people working in military to me. And the Yellow Book, the way it was described to me as far back as 1983, when I started on my home box office effort to try to produce that hour for HBO. I was able to talk to a military person who said that they had had one of these Yellow Books in their hands with somebody trying to teach them how to work this. Now today, the iPad looks very much like the person now talking to me back in 1983. We didn't have any iPads then. We didn't have any cell phones then. But the way it was described was like a tablet made out of some, well, metal or plastic or whatever it is. I have no idea. But you would learn to interact with it through your mind. You would be educated, and finger touches in certain ways. And that when you knew how to operate the extraterrestrial Yellow Books, your mind thinking would bring the words literally up like a hologram into the air, and that it could include pictures, movies. It would be still sort of advanced in a way beyond the iPad, because as I understood it, you could either touch to have the pages move with the glow, so you're always in a hologram, or you could roll it, or there were many ways that you could access the information that would always give you three-dimensional illustrations, movies. One of the statements back in 1983 to me that I've always remembered: the extraterrestrials can capture time and play it back. And that discussion was about the instrument that we had found, and we had gotten help from, I guess, a Gray about what was this instrument, and that's the way they explained it. But I thought it also tied into other things I've heard about the Yellow Book, that it is holographic, three-dimensional, color, and that's the question. Can ETs, whatever this means, I'm using the words said to me, capture time and play it back? Would the Yellow Book be a technology that you could capture time and play it back. And that the level of, I guess I want to say, working with photons, electromagnetic fields, gravity, all of it, that seems to be implied in all of these discussions about the extraterrestrial biological entity technologies like the Yellow Book, let alone their craft. That when I have been shown in a document or somebody has written something to me, Linda, we are dealing with intelligences who have technologies that are at least 1,000 years beyond us. Holographic universe, how many holographic universes if we went out 1,000 years from now? Machines that just, maybe you live life through avatars, a whole bunch of avatars. Maybe one of you goes to Ganymede to see what the big base inside of that frozen moon is like. And another goes off to the end of the Milky Way galaxy and goes to Andromeda. And that it could be multiple avatars. And that would come into play with all of the tubes, the tubes that I have in that big chapter in Glimpses Volume 2, which, by the way, the books are supposed to be physically, finally here on Monday. I'm going to get, that's all I'm going to do, is to get all of the orders filled. And for those of you who may not understand what I'm referencing, I've been producing all of my books in a large format with color throughout, and I always think and do things like a documentary style. And when I would need reprints, it would just do a phone call. They have everything they need, and in 6 to 8 weeks, you've got more books. Well, COVID threw a wrench into everything, and it turned out that they had supply chain interruptions on two major parts of getting books done. They had a supply chain shortage on paper. This is not the only book. I've talked with several people who are in the same exact situation as I am, paper shortage and book printing being delayed. And the second was really a surprise, and that is binding glue. There is a supply chain shortage on the binding glue for books. So that's been the delay, and that is why now, on Monday, I will be able to start fulfilling those orders, and hope those of you who may not know about or would like more information about the work that I have been doing for a very long time concerning other intelligences interacting with this planet and throughout this galaxy and beyond, is my book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness, which is the one that is coming, goes with Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1. Those two books are nearly 1,000 pages when you add both books up, with hundreds of illustrations and maps. And I feel that they are the two books that go together that are still the relevance and the accuracy of so much in them from sources, from abductees, military, science, and so forth, that they are really current. And An Alien Harvest is the first book that I did where all of this started, in investigating animal mutilations. And today, that is one of the questions, that is one of the issues because there are animal mutilations, is that in that category of threat, or is there something else that could be defined as a need? And if we all understood what is actually happening, what is it that the non-humans need from Earth and why? We might come into some kind of a two-way street or collaboration. And that is suggested by some of the law enforcement that I was interviewing long ago in An Alien Harvest. And Mysterious Lights in Crop Circles goes to the heart of the mathematical relationship of the universe that we are in, to everything around us, everything that we see having to do with the arrangement of this universe. From a wheat field with a fractal in it to the end of this universe with a trillion fractals. We're all sort of woven together. And somehow, it seems our challenge is to try to begin to see what that pattern is in the weaving. And I'm so glad that you all are with me, and I love you so much. And I promise that I will do an upcoming show where I'll go back to Ian and say, let's just do a whole bunch of Q&A. So I'll never be doing the same thing every week. And I thank you so much for your kindness, for your compassion, the people who write letters and email. I have you taped around everywhere. I love you dearly. And I hope that we could extend love to the dear animals on this planet who are also suffering, and to everyone. May we be protected by the light, the thought that dwells in the light. Love you.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.